Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you, whether it's nighttime or the morning. It's always good, isn't it? And here we are. We're going to do something meaningful today. We're going to have a look at, what are we going to have a look at? We're going to look at 4 opponent powers and how we can use them in daily life. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the teaching itself, let's set our motivation and take refuge together. Of course, that requires us to get comfortable in our seats and to be present. So please, do that. Adjust your posture. Just check to see that your back is straight and your shoulders are relaxed, and you can place your hands wherever you like. And once you're comfortable, just acknowledge the fact that the body is breathing itself. And just become aware of the movements and feelings associated with breathing. You can do this quite simply by placing your awareness anywhere upon the body and just noticing the movements that take place, the feelings associated with it, each time you inhale and exhale the breath. So everything's slowing down a little and you're aware of your breathing, the sense of relaxation and focus. So while you continue to breathe normally and naturally, think about why you're here and what you want to accomplish by being here. But imagine that you've made this aspiration in front of the Buddha and his spiritual entourage who appear in the space above you right now. Then acknowledge that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. And this intention that you have for being here today is to bring benefit to those surrounding you as well as yourself. So a goal that accomplishes that is Buddhahood for the benefit of others. So think that today you're going to engage in these teachings to bring about enlightenment for the benefit of others. And to help you accomplish this goal, we can take refuge in the 3 rare sublime ones, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and generate a mind of enlightenment. So let's do that now. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Do you think that many rays of colored light come out from the heart of the Buddha and they wash over you? They remove every hindrance and obstacle to this genuine wish you have to become enlightened for the benefit of others. In the absence of these obstacles and hindrances, acknowledge that you can bring about enlightenment for the benefit of others. Then to strengthen this aspiration, recollect the four immeasurable thoughts. And decide to establish others in these four boundless states by you yourself accomplishing the four immeasurable states. Again, from this determination, again, rays of colored light comes up from the heart of the Buddha and washes over you and all the beings surrounding you. Every hindrance and obstacle to possessing those four immeasurable thoughts is washed away, and you and all beings find yourselves having immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. Inviting yourself in front of this great field of refuge, the field for accumulating merit. I think now that we're going to engage in the seven limb prayer. So reciting with me. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit it will hold in ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. Now to rid ourselves of any clinging that we might have to the merit as being truly existent, we recollect emptiness, and we can offer our body, speech, mind, and the universe itself to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the form of a wonderful pure land. So reciting, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnayatayami. So offering has been released and accepted by the Buddha, and he smiles at us with delight, and we gaze up into his eyes, and we feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart and moves through space to come and abide above the crown of your head. The emanation begins to descend, entering the crown of your head and coming down through your body to stop and rest at the level of your heart. Now the radiance of this emanation begins to expand, filling your body and mind with light. And the light goes out through the pores of your skin, spreads into the 10 directions of space, filling it with radiant light. And wherever beings exist within space, think they've been touched by that light and fully transformed into the awakened state. And a sense of joy arises with the recognition that you've established all beings into the state of enlightenment and they're no different than yourself. Then, from the 10 directions of space, the light begins to withdraw, coming back and re-entering your body at the level of the heart. Find yourself breathing normally and naturally. Have the feeling of being embodied, sitting on your seat. And acknowledge that this meditation has been one of imagination. And it's placed an imprint upon your mind. So at some stage in the near future, depending upon the causes and conditions you put into place, you will become a fully awakened Buddha and be able to help others effortlessly and spontaneously. And you allow a sense of joy to arise again. You breathe in deeply through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth. And in your own time, allow your eyes to blink open and move your body in whichever way you like until you find yourself present again in front of the screen. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. And let's have a look at what we've studied so far. So we know this course began last week, and we looked at actions or karmas. And these are intentional acts committed or carried out by a being who possesses a sentient nature, someone just like ourselves. And so in dependence upon this action, an experience will take place. And these actions are created through our body, speech, and mind. These actions are made up of stages. So we often have a beginning, often called the mode of the intention for acting, then there's the execution of the act, and then there's the culmination or completion of the act. And so you mentioned these last week, and we'll go through them again today. We see that these actions brought about effects, or there were consequences from our actions. And there were four in particular that we looked at. Oftentimes there's sort of numbered as 3, but if we actually break the second one down, we find there's 2 there, so we always get 4. So we have what's called the fruitional effect. This is often, the fruitional effect is basically the rebirth you find yourself in as a consequence of one of your actions. Then there are what they call the causally concordant effects. And if you remember, those are behavioral and experiential. And the final result was called an environmental result. So we looked at those last week, and what I'd also like to mention today is some of the consequences of these actions. So I want to look at that first, and then I'll introduce you to the different texts I've used and what we're going to actually do today. So whenever we engage in an action, there are some things we should know about it. So for instance, there's an analogy given in, let's say, this is like the four things we need to remember about karma, and we can relate it to the analogy of a tree, in particular a medicinal tree, or even a poisonous tree, depending upon what action you engage in. So here,
Eddie, these are the characteristics, aren't they? Are they the defining characteristics of karma?
Of karma, yeah. We need to. This is what we need to remember. So, karma is definite. So when we say karma is definite, we don't mean it's definite that's going to produce its result. That doesn't mean that. It just means that this is what's definite about a karma, right? An unskillful, non-virtuous action will produce suffering. A skillful, constructive action will produce happiness. That's what they mean by being definite. They use in relation to the tree here. If you plant cherry seeds, you only get a cherry tree. A cherry tree comes from cherry seeds. So it's like saying, you do something negative, the result is negative. You do something positive, the result is positive. It's always definite like that. So we never plant cherry seeds and end up with a pepper tree. That never happens. Just like you never do something constructive and it turns into suffering. The second thing we need to know is that when we create an action, the consequences of it are large. Like they can grow. So you can do something very small, but the consequences can be huge. So we know that from like having this tiny little seed, it's only one tiny thing, but we put it in the ground, and if the sunlight hits it, we get the water, it's good conditions, well, it starts to grow. And we get a small shoot, and it becomes a trunk, then we've got leaves, flowers, fruits, produces shade, a lot of stuff that comes out of one little tiny thing. So in other words, it's sort of going to say, you can create one sort of small action, but this small action can create huge consequences. The third thing to remember is that you will never get the result of suffering if you don't have the cause for it. And you'll never get the result of happiness if there's no cause for it. So it's like they say, the simple one here is like, if you want a cherry tree, just praying for it, it's not going to happen. Neither will just having the land for it have it happen. Neither will just having the sunlight. You actually need to have the cause. So in this case of the cherry tree, that's that seed. So for us, it's if we experience some form of suffering, we should be able to go, oh, okay, that's an effect, it's a result. It must have a cause. If I'm experiencing happiness or pleasure, it must have a cause. And the cause of it is definitely something that's alignment with it. And finally, we have this thing called the karmic results are inevitable. So this is saying that when we create an action, there's a consequence that will follow. And it's just like the example of the cherry tree here, right? So if you put the seed in the soil and it's got heat and moisture, sunlight and so forth, and sufficient nutrients, over time, that seed is going to, ripen, isn't it? It's going to make a little shoot and then gradually grows up into a plant. But it takes time. So just because you put the water in, you put it in the soil, we don't look back over there and suddenly, hello, it's a big tree, right? So it takes time. And it's just like us. Right? So we can create actions, but the effects don't come straight away. They can take time to ripen.
Yeah, do you have a question?
Yep, sure.
On that one, karma is definite. So from a cherry seed, you get a cherry. And yet a human could be reborn into the animal realm. I mean, okay, that's the first part, but could humans also be born into the plant realm?
Eddie, remember to stop your
Oh.
screen share.
Yeah, thank you, Miffy. You might probably have to say that a few more times because
Mhm.
I'm likely to forget each time. So, can you? So I'm on the screen now for everybody.
Yep.
Is that the case? Okay, great. So Susan, this was about the definiteness of karma, wasn't it?
Yes,
And so you said, so a human can find themselves reborn into the animal realm. Can it be possible for them to find themselves in the plant realm? Was that right?
yeah. And how, if a cherry tree can only produce a cherry seed can only produce a cherry seed, why can a human be born into the animal realm?
Okay, so there's um, so one thing is, so the human is not born into the animal realm. The human's life finishes at death. There's no human anymore. There's just a consciousness with an I imputed to it. And that consciousness with the I, and the I is holding the karmic seeds, or the consciousness dependent upon the tenet system you're familiar with. So human life finishes there. Now there's just consciousness with an I and the karmic seeds. And it's sort of driven along by the energy of that karma. And then we have this thing called rebirth in the animal realm. But it's not a human that gets reborn into the animal realm. It's just the conscious and the I, the mere I. So there are, in terms of the rebirth into life of a plant or something like this. So I know in Tibetan Buddhism, that's not, they don't agree with that. But I do know that there are other forms of Buddhism that are open to that interpretation because it's a living being. But there's debate about that sort of thing. You know, like what is sentience? Is a plant actually sentient? Does it have feelings and so forth? So there's still debate
Also,
about
Eddie, there's also like debate in Western science about where the demarcation is between a living thing like a plant and a living being. And so things like corals, you know, because corals are kind of in that in-between state between being a thing and a being, because part of a definition of a being is to be able to act. From a Buddhist point of view and from a Western point of view, the part of a definition of a being is to be able to move. And because corals are stationary, they're in this kind of in-between area between a being and a thing. So it's kind of similar, the debate in the Western world and also the debate in the Buddhist tenet systems.
Okay, thank you. So is that sort of helpful for you, Susan?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, Miffy, for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I'll guys, is there anything else about this four things to be known about karma? Okay, so I'll go back to the bizzo. Okay, let's see if I can do this share screen. Share. Let's see what happens. No.
And then, Eddie, you have to push, go to slideshow.
Yeah.
No, go up along the top to slideshow. Slideshow under the orange banner.
No, I don't have anything like that here. You have to come and have a look. I mean, I don't.
Eddie, do you see where there's the red or orange banner that says?
Yeah, I put the stop share thing there.
There you
go. Now I'm back here. So you've got my face, right?
Yeah.
Go to screen share.
Share.
Yeah. Share.
Yeah.
This is the orange banner.
Which orange banner?
This is orange, and that's the banner.
This one here.
Yeah, and now
Okay.
slideshow.
Slideshow. Click that. Perfect.
From which slide are you on?
I want to be here.
Here. So yep.
Okay.
So click on that and then go from current slide.
Yeah.
Now, when you go stop share, you've got to
don't stop the whole PowerPoint, just stop the
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Okay, thank you. We're back. Sorry about that. I'm not so good at this. Okay, so this is the material that I've been using to supplement the course, and it hasn't changed at all from last week. So we'll just move on, and next week, of course, the books will change, so I'll say a bit more about them then. But today, we're going to have a look at what purification actually is. The 4 opponent powers that are used in the process of purification, and what each of these opponent powers actually purifies. So briefly, what's purification? So I've put this definition up here from Professor Alexander Berzin. I sort of like it. It covers everything. Right? But of course, there's still questions we can ask about this. So he's defined it as the removal in stages of the afflictive and cognitive obscurations, as well as karmic aftermath from one's mental continuum. So I think you all know that when we look at what the sources of our suffering, we say they are afflictions and karma. So the obscurations and karma. So there's 2 things here. And so you can see this here. So I've got the 2, there's the afflictive and cognitive obscurations. And then there's the karmic aftermath. So karmic aftermath is referring to, like, you know, when we act, then the action stops. And there could be a consequence, right? That's what it's referring to, the aftermath. What comes after the first action we do? Well, a number of different things. And this is what this term aftermath is sort of referring to. And when Berzin talks about, he talks about terms of networks of karmic force, karmic tendency, and habit. The afflictive obscurations, I think we're all familiar with them. They're like hatred, anger, pride, all those sort of things that I think most of you know, doubt and so forth. The cognitive obscurations, these are really the results of apprehending everything as if it truly existed. So that stays on your mental stream until we actually become fully awakened. So Buddhas. So even though we can remove the afflictive obscurations, the cognitive obscurations are only removed finally on the 10th ground in Buddhahood. Then they're gone. In terms of the negative karma, so that's sort of stopped around the 8th ground for the bodhisattvas. So this term purified, another way of looking at it, it just means to you're able to stop and what can I say? You're able to stop like something so that the effect is not produced. You know, so I said before, you know, we act, the action stops, and now there's a potential for some sort of outcome. And purification stops that outcome. Yeah? So when we looked at, last week, we looked at the 4 results. So one of the results was the rebirth result. So here, because we're talking about the negative karma or the destructive karma, right? So, you know, okay, the result of the fruitional result of a destructive karma will be a lower realm rebirth. So we know that's, okay, how can I stop that? I need to stop that. So purification is a means of stopping that result of being reborn in the lower realms. And it's the same with the behavioral result and the experiential result. We do something to stop that behavioral result or the experiential result. And that doing something is called purification. the thing that can I say, the knowledge that you could have to be sure that purification actually works is the knowledge that the mind is naturally pure. That's always been the case. So in other words, the mind, it's not the afflictions, where they're cognitive or obscuration, and the karmic aftermath too. None of that is inherently existent. None of it truly exists. And so that's why, so the mind is like naturally free of it. It's some of the things I use as analogies. When you, on a cold day, right? So you're cold day and you get up in the morning and you sort of put on the
Eddie,
stove and things.
just stop the share for a moment.
Yep. So, yeah. So you get up in the morning, it's cold outside, and what gradually happens is the room starts to heat up, right? And then if you look out the window, it's not clear. Right? Now you sort of look at it and you go, well, so is there something wrong with the glass, or is there something wrong with my eyes or something? No? And you sort of you go, no, if I want to look out the window, all I've got to do is grab a rag and, wipe it across the window and the condensation disappears. So the condensation is not a natural part of the glass, is it? You just remove it, right? You get a rug, you just get a rag and you just remove it. And that's the same with us. These obscurations are just like that in terms of the mind. Michael, yes?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Could you be a little bit more specific in the difference between the karmic aftermath, which if I understand it correctly, the karmic aftermath is I am in a bad relationship because I'm in an abusive relationship because I abused in a previous life or a previous time, right? Or I'm in a lower rebirth. I'm in a lower situation of rebirth because of my previous karma. But
Yeah.
but the difference between that and the mental and I don't see the slide right now. So there were two, the mental and some other the obscuration.
Yeah. The two obscurations, cognitive and afflictive.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the difference? I'm a little
Okay.
confused.
Yeah. So with afflictive obscurations, they're the simplest ones, right? They're things like hatred, lust, doubt, the things that we're most familiar with. Sometimes they call them emotional afflictions, but really they're just these afflictive mental states, right, that we're most familiar with. Like how the cognitive obscuration works for us is that there's this, what can I say? Like when we're in the world, right? Like wherever you are right now, and you just look at things. Right? So it naturally appears to us as if there's two things around. There's me and the world. We're separate. Right? So that's the cognitive obscuration, that we're separate from the world. The other way they describe it is this, like the two truths, relative and ultimate, seem to be quite separate from one another. So that's, I think that, okay. Excuse me. Okay. And your idea of karmic aftermath, that's fine. Of course, it goes into much more detail, but I think that's enough that we need to work with, Yeah. Okay, now Miffy, here we go again. Let's see if I can do it right. I'm on share screen. We hit the share screen button. Oh, here we are. Look, it's all going well. Yep. Yeah. So so this idea, like I said before, that the mind is naturally pure. You see that when you hear these things like the mind is clear light. That's one of the ways of talking about the natural purity of the mind. And
So Eddie, when you're talking about that, you're talking about the nature of the mind, because like my mind doesn't necessarily feel like clear light.
no, it won't feel like that's how the mind actually exists as clear light. Its reality is clear light. But there's very good material written about this towards the end of a book called Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. That's the clearest explanation I've read of it, and it's quite brief. So you sort of can get your head around it. And to me, at least, it's really inspiring. You have to see it so clearly written, and you just go, ah, this sort of sense of relief. Just like, yeah, they're not, all of this stuff is not as real as we think it is. Now, when we apply a purification method, two things can happen. One is we can be completely purified. If we can completely remove these obscurations. But to do that, the only way you can do that is with a wisdom realizing emptiness. There's got to be a perceptual realization. So not just the understanding, not a conceptual realization. You've actually got into the path of seeing and go beyond it into the path of meditation and so forth. And that completely purifies that aspect of the mind. So when we purify, like I said, it's a process and it's done in stages. So when you first enter the path of seeing, a whole lot of conceptual misunderstandings about ourselves and reality, they're gone and we'll never ever get them back. And then now we start dealing with these afflictive emotions, these afflictions. So that, like I said, the complete way is with the wisdom realizing emptiness. Use other methods that it's partial, meaning the mind can be sort of purified for a while, but then the stuff can come back again. The major reason for that is because the root of the problems is still there. And that root can only be removed with the wisdom realizing emptiness. So the wisdom realizing emptiness really gets at the cause of suffering. But you can see here when we use other methods, we get at the conditions that support those causes. And if we can hinder all the conditions, we'll get different results. So that's stuff we can definitely do like now without, even if we don't have the wisdom realizing emptiness, we can definitely still purify the mind. So what are we going to purify? So one way, like I said before, was these two types of obstacles, the afflictive and cognitive obscurations and the karma. But here, the actions to be purified are, for instance, first what we call downfalls. So a downfall is cannot be purified completely by using the four opponent powers, which is the second method we can use. So the four opponent powers will purify negativities, but it won't purify downfalls. So downfalls are the vows and promises that we've made in as we make progress along the path. So to purify a downfall, you need to engage in a specific ritual with the four opponent powers. But with negativities, you can just use the four opponent powers.
Eddie, is that because the downfalls are to do with, say, having broken vows, and the vows we've taken in a specific ritual, so it needs to have that kind of formality and awareness brought to it to purify?
I think that's a really nice way of putting it. I've never heard it said that way, but that makes real good sense to me. It's like, yeah, I'd say, yeah, quite likely.
I also remember, Corey Jackson saying about just when we take those vows, there the counterbalancing implementation intention, and so was this mouthful about how it makes psychologically a huge difference to actually say a vow out loud rather than just think, oh, I'm just going to try and
Oh
be a
yeah,
good person.
yeah, for sure.
And so then maybe the purification has to have that ritual of re-saying that vow to completely purify it.
Yeah, so you know, when we take the refuge vow, right? So we can damage our refuge vow. So then to retake it, we take it in front of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. That's where we took it, who we took it from, right? We took it from our spiritual mentor, seen as the Buddha. So to retake it, we imagine our mentor or the Buddha in front of us, and we go for refuge again. So, you know, we do this each morning, each night, and some people do it 6 times a day, or at least twice, 3 of each. And if we'd damaged our bodhisattva vow again, if you wanted to retake that vow, you'd have to do it in front of the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas.
I think Michael has a question too.
Yep, Michael, yep.
So Eddie, I'm wondering, because last week you talked about how, particularly in Western culture, and this is certain, and I'm certainly guilty of this, that we kind of think of karma as when poop happens to me. It's the poop that happens to me as the karma. And you said, no, it's not the poop that happens. It's not even necessarily the action I took. It's the thought of me that started the whole thing. So can a downfall occur when it's solely a mental thing, or do I have to do something physically, or do I have to do something more than just have a thought for a downfall to occur?
In terms of the bodhisattva vow, it's just the thought, Michael. That's it. You think I can't do this, like, you know, and deliberately sort of give it up. That's the thought. Okay, let me try again now. Oh, yes, that's still there. This is all good. So are there any other questions in terms of these downfalls and negativities? If you've taken a higher yoga tantra, you'll know there's a different way to retake your vows. You know, you don't do it like they do in the bodhisattva way, and you don't do it like you do in the refuge. It's a different type of thing. And if you're an ordained person, it'd be different again. So, but that's for the downfall. So when we look at ourselves, we are ordinary people engaging in a spiritual path. We might have taken bodhisattva vows, but most of our stuff will be around these negativities, which you can purify using the 4 opponent powers. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time. Right. So let's move into the nitty gritty of this thing. So I'm just going to give you a little, like a brief review of what we saw, just so you can recollect it, because we'll be using it quite a bit. Okay. Like, so, you know, we had this thing, we create actions, right? So every action, you can describe them in different ways. Here I've used the 3, the most simplest, but we're really going to be using the 4 here, because these 4 really go well together with the 4 opponent powers. So we intend to do something. This is the actual, real karma there, the intention. Karma is really intention. Nevertheless, we could also call the action, and then it's completed, and that's where most people think karma is, when actions, you know, we get the result. Karma is also the seed. Remember that we've left something on the aftermath. We've left something there ready to come into fruition at some stage. There's another way we could talk about these actions, and this to use these: the basis, attitude, performance, and culmination. So the basis, remember, is either the object or a sentient being. The attitude is always made up of these 3 parts, whereby we've got the, what is it?
If you just hit it again, it'll come up.
The, okay.
If you just, oh, no, it didn't.
So you have to, in the attitude, you have a correct discernment of the object. There is an affliction present, and there's a motivation in there. So it's like putting all these here, like intention is now in here. There's three things in here. We actually perform the action and it finishes, and we know we've finished it. Now, all of these action, every action can have different degrees of strength, different degrees of weight, depending upon how it's done. You know, like what was the actual attitude? Was it one of hatred or was it ignorance? So depending upon that, different outcome. How was it performed? So again, that has a bearing on the result, and also in the culmination. So the whole effects can be moderated by how each of these parts are done. A quote from the Buddha, he says, Maitreya, when a bodhisattva, a great being, possesses these four teachings, non-virtuous actions that are performed and accumulated will be overcome. Now, what are these four? He says, well, they are the power of remorse, the power of the antidote, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of the basis. So in brief, these are these four opponent powers. Okay, so again, let's have a look here. So this is now we're going to look at, I'm going to put all these up so we can see it. So here we have the four opponent powers up on top. You can see I've given them some of the different names that they're known by. We have reliance or refuge, also known as the foundation. Well, that's the direct antidote to the basis of the action. Then we have the resolve, restraint, turning away, and that works against the attitude and the three parts that make it up. The remedy, meaning antidotes, they work against the actual performance of the negative action that we created in the past. And remorse, repentance, release works against the joy or the sense of satisfaction that we had when we created the negative act. So what I'll do now is take this and go into it in a little bit more detail.
Eddie, I'm just looking at this, and it really becomes very clear why we need to have all four opponents, does it? Because if we actually want to work against each of the components, then we've got to have the thing that does it.
Yeah, and once again, you'll see, you know, like if any of these parts are weak, of course, in terms of the opponents, then the purification part in that part will be weak. So we'll have a look now at each of these, and then I'll relate it once again back to this at the very end, but we'll talk about it as we go through. So the reliance opposes the fruitional and environmental effect. And what are we relying upon, of course, are the three jewels of refuge and bodhicitta. So when we've gone, in terms of the creation of negativities, there's only really two classes of beings you can do them against, right? Enlightened beings and unenlightened beings. So to purify the actions that we do against enlightened beings, we have the three jewels of refuge. And for those against the unenlightened beings, ordinary beings who are suffering, we have bodhicitta. So these are two major ways we oppose the negative karma we've created in the past. So by taking refuge in the three rare sublime ones and the mind of enlightenment, we are re-establishing, you know, the right attitude towards our desire to bring about a sense of freedom for ourselves and a sense of enlightenment. So when I was sort of preparing this material, gosh, it was tremendous doing this class for me. Yeah,
perhaps stop the share.
Oh, thank you. Yes, get a little excited and forget. So we were looking at taking refuge in the 3 jewels of refuge. So I'll just ask you, anybody here, so what actually provides us with the refuge? What's our actual refuge? Anyone? Does anyone remember? We have 3 jewels of refuge. Which one? Do we need all 3 or can we take one? Which one is the one that actually provides our refuge? Barbara?
I would say the Dharma.
Yep, the Dharma jewel, and that's quite correct. It's the Dharma jewel that is the actual protector. We protect ourselves. We find our refuge in the Dharma. Now, when we take refuge in the 3 jewels, what meaning should we take away from it? If it was an essential meaning, if there's one thing to take away from this, we've now committed ourselves. We are Buddhists now. We say, okay, I've taken refuge in the 3 jewels. I'm a Buddhist. How do we act? What do we do now that we've taken refuge?
We try and act like a Buddha.
Okay, we try and act like a Buddha. Yep. Okay, let's say, so before the Buddha was a Buddha, what did he have to do?
Practice.
Okay, practice what? There's all sorts of practices you can do, right? But
The Dharma.
yeah, what Dharma?
Continually cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. Continually, because we even our vows is like a glass and we make it dirty all the time. So I say we violate our vows daily. We don't break them. Breaking is like smashing the glass.
Yeah.
Then you really have to go back to teacher and beg for forgiveness. But daily we practice cleansing all the stuff that our crazy mind continually does.
Okay, so I'm trying to use your own this analogy here. So why do we have to keep cleaning the vase? Why do we have to keep cleaning the glass or keep cleaning our minds? We say, oh, well, we keep breaking our vows and we keep doing this and that. So we're getting closer now to what the Dharma is that we should be practicing. What's the Dharma that we practice once we've taken refuge?
Cease evils.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's good. Yep.
Understanding dependent arising.
Well, that's a great one. That's a big one. That's right. So can we narrow
Understanding
it down?
emptiness.
That's the best of all. That's the greatest of all. Yeah. So most of those for us, we could get dependent arising. So when we have dependent arising, there's 2 aspects we can really look at with dependent arising. One is the empty aspect. What's the other aspect?
Is it ignorance? The opposite of emptiness?
The opposite of no, that's back on our emptiness side.
Oh,
Okay.
cause
Oh.
and effect.
Karmic cause and effect. That's the answer, right? When we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the 3 rare sublime ones, it means we're now going to act in accordance with the Buddha's teachings on karmic cause and effect.
So we're not going to be like monkey and go, hey, Buddha, why don't you fix things for me?
No, we have to, no, that's what the Dharma is, to teach us to fix things for ourselves. And just like you said, the first thing is restrain yourself from creating the bad stuff and definitely do the good stuff, right? Yeah. So the major thing to take when we become, commit ourselves to the Dharma, to this way of life as a Buddhist, is karmic cause and effect. We've got to work in harmony with that. So remember, karmic cause and effect is internal cause and effect. when we become a Buddhist, Buddhists are sort of called insiders. And everyone who's not a Buddhist, who's not taken refuge, they're outsiders. So they're outside the Buddhist path. But once you're a Buddhist, you're an insider. So the insider is not just, within the teachings, of course it is. But if you look at the Buddha Dharma, it's primarily internal, isn't it? It's how your mind works. Buddha's Dharma is really psychological stuff. So we're looking at what creates harm for me? Why do I hurt so much? What creates the happiness for me? And we'll find it's all primarily mental. Like karma's intention, that's mental. All the afflictions, they're mental. So, and as I said, and as you pointed out, Barbara, this is the Dharma jewel. To work in harmony with the teachings on karmic cause and effect. And as you pointed out, Michael, so karmic cause and effect is one aspect of dependent origination, isn't it? So that's how we really protect ourselves. And in relationship to that, we got to go back to these 4 things I put up before about the karma being definite. Karma is expandable, no result without a cause, and results are inevitable.
Eddie, just reminding you, got half an hour.
Okay, Deggy, thank you. Thank you, Rafik. So we've got to work and so we do that, and what that really does is protects us harming ourselves, and it really protects us harming others too. And then what we can do is then we can also go, that's all well and good, but the mind of enlightenment is even greater. So that really helps us again to go, okay, not only am I going to restrain myself from harming others, I'm actually going to try and benefit others as well. Now I want to lift them up, bring them up to the same state that I'm aiming at, Buddhahood. So then we have the bodhicitta. And so you see there, well, I hope you'll see how this really acts as the antidote against our spiritual mentors and sentient beings. Works against us harming the Sangha, harming the Dharma, and harming any being who might be enlightened. Now whoops, I'm just going to pop along. I better not get too proud about this, but I'm happy I'm moving along. Okay, now we come to another power, and this is called the power of restraint, often called the power of promise or resolution. Lama Yeshe called it an indestructible determination to turn away from faulty behavior. So this power opposes the behavioral result. Now, the causally concordant behavioral result. The
So
other
can
one,
you
of
give
course, purified the fruitional result. Miffy, what was that?
So, like an example of so just what does it mean that you just go, I'm not going to do it again?
Yeah, well, of course, it's like, so we have a behavior. So suppose your behavior is you like to kill things. Yeah? So you like killing things like now, you enjoy it. You don't think there's anything too wrong with it and so forth, or some things you like to are okay to kill, but other things are not.
Right.
So for whatever reason we don't find ourselves in the hell realm, we find ourselves right here in the human realm. But what's the behavior?
Oh, like liking
We
fishing,
like
for
to kill.
instance.
Yeah, that's right. We still like killing. We still like going. We want to go fishing. Right? So the behavior of the past life is continued into this life. And remember we said last week, this is the worst one of all, of these three results, really. So what we have to do, of course, is find the way to stop bad behaviors. You have to commit yourself to not do it.
Mhm.
It's like, if you're an alcoholic, the thing is, you've got to commit yourself to go, I cannot take a drink.
Mhm.
So, but to develop this power or this attitude really depends on another attitude, which is going to come up shortly. It's called the power of remorse or regret. So having this power really counters us having no wish or no intention to stop doing it.
And Eddie, this one really, the bodhicitta, or at least an altruistic reason, is so helpful in this, because often we won't do it just for ourselves. But like I was just thinking, say people who give up smoking, who try again and again and again and always fall off the wagon, but then when they get pregnant, then they go, right, I'm giving up now, and it's for certain. So having someone else to do it for makes it much easier in a way, or gives you more power.
Yeah, and that's what we often find, isn't it? That when we consider, like you said, our future child, or the fact of many of us, if you're a parent and you used to have behaviors and now you see how it's got an impact on your children, that's a tremendous force to go, I can't do it. It was all right if it just impacted me, but it's not anymore. It's, it might be, my children. So this power is the resolve to avoid performing the unwholesome actions in the present and the future. And you do this because you understand the disadvantages of continuing to behave like this. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. So this is the power of a remedy. So the power of the remedy opposes what they call the throwing karma. So throwing karma is an urge. I like to say this karmic aftermath, right? The urge is left. Even though you stop the action, there's still an urge left to do it again. And that urge can throw you into a future life. So it's an urge to do something that's really so strong that its karmic aftermath can throw you into a future life. It can shape the type of rebirth that we take. And its remedy, of course, can be any virtuous act performed for the purpose of purification. Now, these virtuous acts I've got to put up, there's like 6 of them in general, relying upon the profound sutras. So the profound sutras, of course, are really the sutras on emptiness.
So Eddie, is that reading the sutras or making offerings to them, or?
You could do all of those as long as your intention is to purify. Another great one, of course, is good, good interest in emptiness, which I hope we all have, because without the wisdom realizing emptiness, which will only arise if you have interest in it, there's no freedom from cyclic existence.
So stay tuned for Eddie's next course.
Thank you, dear. Yeah. So here we have recitation. So you can recite the Heart Sutra or the Diamond Cutter Sutra, which we do here often. There are other forms of worship. In other words, this means so you can make stupas, bind texts, create other images, altars and shrines, and so forth. You can rely upon the images. So this is like making offerings to, like I said, the profound sutras, making offerings to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And there's also what they call the dependence upon the names. So you see there's the 35 Buddha practice. There's the 7 medicine Buddha practice. There's the Vajrasattva practice. Taras. There are a lot of different practices where you can recite the names, and it can even be individual names. It might even be your own guru's name that you recite. You know, if you have this, let's say,
Like Rinpoche's name mantra.
yeah, with this idea of purification, when you recognize that, you know, you've actually let down your guru. And so you want to purify the action. So here you've got a lot of freedom to act. But the major thing, the really important thing here is it is done for the sake of the purification. You've got to keep that clear in mind. Because I remember there was a student here one time, and he had a big problem with lust. He had a lot of attraction to women. And he actually coming to the center was in a way, what ended up, of course, was in picking up different women, or at least making attempts to. And he knew it was a problem, right? So he came to me and we talked about it. I said, well, you know, the only way you can stop this is you've got to oppose it in some way. So, you know, here are these different techniques you can use to oppose it. So what did he do? Prostrations. Now, the prostrations didn't help him overcome his lust for women in the present, right? It might have some long-term effect later, but it didn't have much effect now. And so he kept up his behavior. So I was, you know, saying, look, you know, if you really want to stop this behavior, you've got to find the direct antidote and work against it. So I just want to throw that out to you. So, you know, you actually try and, if you acknowledge you have problems and behavior and so forth, try and find the antidote that actually works against them.
So doing prostrations, it's a little bit like, it's a distraction. It's like, you know, with kids, you try and distract them from one thing with another thing, but it doesn't actually stop that craving and clinging.
No, that's right. Michael, you'd like to say something?
I'm wondering, because you said there needs to be an intent.
Yeah, an intent to purify. Yeah.
So let's say I'm a really angry person.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I also have other things going on in my life, and I learn about mindfulness meditation.
Sure.
And I start doing mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that in doing mindfulness, without the intent of working on my anger gets better. Does that mean it doesn't fall into this category because there was not an intent specifically to do? So maybe I do mindfulness because I'm having trouble concentrating and focusing. But now that my concentration and focus is better, but I also find my anger has dwindled away.
It's diminished. Yeah.
Right. But that wasn't my intent.
No.
Does that fit into this or no?
Well, I would say it fits in, but sort of indirectly. In the sense I said, you know, before, how we can diminish our problems, but the problems actually still remain from a causal point of view. And so like you say, if you practice mindfulness, then really what you're getting at some of the conditions that might help you to be angry. And with your mindfulness, it's like, you know, I'd say, well, so what are you mindful of? What are you placing your mind on that is, so that you found you actually anger has decreased? So, you know, I guess you sort of have to analyze it a bit, Michael. But, you know, like you say, it could be that, you know, this, you find, I'm not so angry. It's because I've been practicing mindfulness. And my question would be, what are you mindful of? And you might say, breathing. You know, there's a lot of objects of mindfulness you become familiar with. And you say, well, all you've really done is distracted. You know, you've removed your mind off objects that you find unlikable and put them on your breath, which is a great thing because you don't think so much. You know? And so, of course, yeah, you might be so angry.
But that's for something future and not really part of the power of resolve or the power of remedy.
No, that's right. And you just find that that's like a side effect of something happened to you, like in this life. It's like Yeah, but have you actually, there's no real opponent there. You don't have any desire to actually rid yourself of anger. Okay, let's go back to screen.
So then what would be an antidote for anger? Driving and a driver cuts you off, or somebody's rude, or,
Mhm.
is
Well,
it just, it's more, it's, is it,
so the answer, oh, what's going on? Okay, I can't hear you, Susan, and I think Michael looks a bit frozen there.
Eddie, just stop the share. It's okay. People are having just
Okay.
streaming problems.
Okay. So Susan, so the antidote for anger that's mostly recommended in the text, and I think this is the way they do it in ordinary life too, is you have to acknowledge the faults of anger. So then we come back again to go, well, when I'm taking refuge as a Buddhist, what am I taking refuge in? You go, karma, cause and effect. Okay, so when I am angry, what's it do? What are the effects of anger? And they're terrible, absolutely terrible for us. So it's like, okay, so every time I get angry at somebody else who's cut me off, my anger does absolutely nothing to them. But gee, doesn't it hurt me? Doesn't it poison my mental peace? So that's the first thing we should do, is to look at how we keep hurting ourselves when our emotions just run riot. And then it's like, so you go, okay, so now we can look at another antidote. You go, patience. So I need to be patient with others who are unskilled and out of control. In fact, just as much as I am, because look how quickly my anger popped up. Right? I'm just as crazy as them. Right? So I can be patient with this. I'm not going to harm myself. I'll just be patient bearing the idiocy of unenlightened beings. Right? Or the crazy behaviors of unenlightened beings. Because it's quite natural, right? If you're unenlightened, you're going to do silly things. So we can do that. Then we can also look at how actually independence upon this crazy driver, they have actually helped me be patient. Oh, thank you. So now we look at how kind they are to help me in my spiritual practice. So there's a lot of different things we can do, but those are just a few. Like you'll see in the text, especially in the Lamrim, and you'll see a lot of these, they often, when they talk about opponents, they often look at the negative outcomes for us. So it's like, please become familiar with these so that you don't do this, because you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hold yourself back from your desire to be free or to become enlightened. You're crippling yourself every time anger gets a hold of you. And like I said, patience is what a tremendous quality. But it can't be developed unless somebody pushes our buttons or jumps in our face. And I find it, Miffy's had this thing like this happen, and I have too, where you actually think you are patient, or you think you're not proud, right? Why not? Well, I don't get angry. I've never experienced pride, right? And then somebody comes along, or a situation comes along, and now you're angry. It's like, oh my God, or pride happened to Miffy, right? It's like, oh my God, what is this weird thing?
No, it was jealousy. It was jealousy. I thought I was born free of jealousy. I thought, I dodged a bullet. Everybody else has a jealous problem, but not me, until in my early 20s. I just hadn't actually come across something that I would be jealous about. And then,
right.
A friend of mine was doing all this amazing study at uni, and I started just arguing with him and just getting more and more and more upset. And I'm like, what's going on? And I realized I was jealous of the amazing course that he was doing at uni, and I'd been a uni dropout, but it just hit me because I'd never actually experienced that before in my life. So then that was really sobering, because then it was like, oh my gosh, there's still the seeds, the potential of jealousy in my mind just because I haven't experienced it. It was like living, ignorance is bliss for a little while, and then
It's not. That's right. Yeah. Oh, what do I do now? So I've done the wrong thing again, Miffy. Oh, well, here we go.
Got it.
Oh, but here we are. I was on the internet, so I've got to get here and slideshow.
and then from current slide. Yep.
Okay, here's our current slide. We're up to this one. The power of remorse, right? So here, what we're trying to, this opposes experiences similar to the past action. For example, you've killed somebody in the past life, and this life you find yourself having a short life. This experience is similar to the action. And if you actually have remorse, you really have to familiarize yourself with those effects of those actions that we talked about last week, the fruitional karma, the behavior, experience, and environmental effects. And because all those effects, all those results are on the side of dukkha, on the side of the suffering, you've got to think, well, I don't want that. I don't want that to happen to me. So this is why you get the remorse and not guilt. You're looking at really the actions that created these effects, not yourself as the person who did the action. It's the actions are going to produce the effects. So seeing those effects, then you go back to it, I'm never going to do that again. But,
Eddie, that's a really hard one to catch yourself doing, though, because we conflate so much, I've done a bad thing, therefore I'm a bad person. It's just kind of there automatically. You're not even aware of it.
And
so
that's
then
why, this is why the teachings of karmic cause and effect are so important. And also, as Michael pointed out, the one of dependent arising. It's like, who am I? How do I exist?
So we're untangling so many things here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, as one of the, I think it's the Nyingma tradition, when they look at the root of suffering, it's sometimes it's termed as ignorance, but most times it's termed as confusion. We're confused. And so, of course, these unskillful actions, destructive actions arise out of our confusion. So we're not blaming ourselves here. But this is the most important thing. It's not guilt. You should be able to go, if I'm blaming myself for doing these actions, stop it right there. I go, no, Buddha never ever said that. That's never in the Buddhist teachings. We don't put the blame on ourselves. This is like putting the blame on the stick, because it was actually the stick that hurt the dog. But who was holding the stick? You go, well, I was. So nobody blames the stick, they blame the person holding the stick. So you go, well, so who's holding you? What are you in the grip of? And you go to disturbing emotions. Yeah, that's right. That's where the blame has to go. These disturbing emotions are creating these terrible effects. And you go, who's going to experience the effect? Well, I am.
So we kind of do this a little bit in day-to-day life when we kind of blame our youth and stupidity back in the day for now we're experiencing the results now.
Yep, that's right. So now I want to do the slide up so we can have a look. It's a sort of a summary. So here we have these four, no, sorry, these are four parts of the action, right, that we're familiar with. We have a basis down the bottom here. This is the act or the sentient being. The attitude made up of those three parts. We perform the act and the act finishes. So in terms of each of these, now we have, in terms of the culmination, the act is finished. If it's a negative act, we might be happy with that. Good. So what works against you saying good? Well, remorse does. It's not good. You realize it's not, the outcome is terrible. So there's this great remorse that, oh my God, I could experience this outcome. So this is going to, this power of remorse gets in the way of you having an experience similar to the cause. In terms of the performance, we have those 6 different things you could do. This remedies the throwing karma. It stops the ability of karma to throw you into this new rebirth. In terms of the attitude and the 3 parts that make it up, this resolve, then of course the behavior stops. And basis, of course, reliance, the 3 jewels and bodhicitta. This prevents you having the fruitional result, the rebirth result with the accompanying environment of that rebirth. And I see, sometimes it's not strong enough to throw you into the fruitional result, but you end up living in a crappy place. And if you ask yourself, like, Jesus, why am I here? Then we go, well, you like that, Mike? That's right. And some of those places are like crappy, literally. So I know, sort of pulling all the stuff out of the text and coming out just the reading and trying to put it into tables like this to make it pretty straightforward. I just sort of felt quite good about it because it's like, you can sort of see much more clearly now how this stuff works. Right? So it's not just a faith-based thing, when you say, oh, the Lama said this or Buddha said, the 4 opponent powers works. It's like, how? Like, it's wonderful you say that, and I can see that, you're a different person than you were before, but how does it work? So if I mean, that's sort of how my mind works. Like, I want to know the details, and then it gives you sort of confidence to go, okay, when I take refuge, oh man, like what this means. It's not just like, my picture of Buddha or my lovely statue of Buddha, and like, this is refuge. And it goes, well, that looks like refuge, but what's the actual refuge? It goes, look, don't create, what's that lovely thing they say? Do virtue, don't do non-virtue, I think, and look, watch your mind.
Yeah. Refrain from harm, practice virtue, and watch your mind.
Watch your mind. And so that's the Dharma, right? And then the rest sort of follows, isn't it? It's like, you either catch yourself before you actually do a silly action, and straight off, you've got your reliance there. But if you forget somehow, and so some of you gave me examples last week, which we're going to work on next week, use them for examples. If you have any others, please send them in to Miffy, and we'll put them up, and let's have a look at them. And I think you'll be able to see how we can use these remedies, how we can rely upon the Dharma to stop the behaviors and experience things similar to the causes. Like I said, for us, most of us, it's like we're going to catch ourselves afterwards. What I mean by that is we're going to be unskillful first. We're going to destroy our harmony first. Then we're going to play catch up. Right? So, but if we just sort of get into the habit of catching up and sort of suddenly become more and more aware of our internal behaviors, we can move the bar backwards so that we actually don't do the action. But we can sort of feel this thing, this karmic aftermath, this energy coming up to act. And we're going to know, is that a skillful act or an unskillful act? Am I going to create something good here, or am I going to destroy my peace of mind? And so you can put the antidote in straight off. But like I'm saying, if that's not the case, and probably not the case for most of us, and we're going to keep, we slide to either extreme, don't we? Sometimes we catch them, sometimes we don't. There's a lot of great stuff we can do if we don't. So don't give up hope. We should keep hope alive. This is a lot we can do. And, we understand that anything produced, like the four opponent powers, is subject to change. Anything produced. So mental states are produced. Suffering is produced. It can be changed, it can be moderated. And we're the only ones that can really do it. It's not going to help a great deal if we have a harsh teacher outside us, or our spouses, or our children, like we used to do, telling people how to behave. Right? Like it's got to grow up from the inside. And we don't need to be harsh to ourselves. All you have to recognize is this causes suffering, this doesn't. So what's our takeaway for today? Well, we definitely know there's four opponent powers. I hope you'll take the time to sort of like memorize them and know what they're meant to do. So we know that we have actions that are made up of four parts, and each of these opponent powers works against the outcome of those actions. So basically, the principle behind karma is volitional action.
Stop the share, hun.
Okay. So the principle behind karma is a volitional action. So it's an action that's been driven by like an intention. So if we can, as we are learning about karma and intentions, then we can make adjustments. We can, like for instance, do something silly, recognize we've done something silly and not rejoice in it. Right? We immediately, oh my God, that's terrible outcome for me. Oh, we go, oh, sorry, straight away. So immediately it's not a complete action. But there's no joy in us creating any harm here. That's one of the simplest things we can do with the people we actually work with and hurt in intentional ways and unintentional ways. Right? If we so a little while ago, I'll give you some insight to our life, Miffy and I. A little while ago, we had one of those misunderstandings, right? And so I got quite cranky with her. And as I'm going blah blah blah, my mind is going, that's a little bit intense, Eddie.
And meanwhile, I'm going, oh, this is my opportunity to practice patience.
So, even in the midst of my delusion and my outburst, it's like, it's great. There's this little thing going, I was just like, this is a little extreme. So I can go, it is. What I'm saying is really
a little.
So I had to stop, right? And then go really quickly, I'm sorry. And that's the way it is for us. At least it's not complete, we don't go all the way. Oh, I'm glad I see this and blah, 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 and then we leave it.
Mm. And I mean, the other good thing too, Eddie, is that with these teachings, and I have a chance to not take it personally. as well, and that's been really helpful for me. So being on the other end too.
Okay, so coming up now next week and the week after, we're going to look at how we can apply this knowledge to interact in the world. Just like Susan said, you know, we're in the car and somebody cuts off and suddenly we're angry, or we're at work and somebody says something really unkind, you know, and then anger flares up. You know, how do we apply it now? How do we take refuge? What do we do? So I'm going to, this next class, I'll sort of show it in different levels of our understanding, because I know that, well, at least myself, you know, I mean, even if I think, someone like you say, you know, I've been doing this for over 20 years, but I'm really still a beginner. Because, I mean, even though you can pack a lot of information in, it's like, does it come out? Like, do you act on it, right? You know, you might find, yeah, sometimes I'm pretty good. Sometimes I'm not so good. So what do we do when we're not so good? And, you know, as we know, the path is made up of stages, practices for small scope, middling scope, and great scope. So I'll pick a couple of antidotes from each section. So you might know, oh, I could do this, or I could do that. You know, I hope to see you and that you'll find it interesting, because I'm certainly finding it interesting thinking about it and looking for antidotes and things like that. So we come to the end of our class. I just want to say thank you very much for being here.
Dedication
Let's
prayers.
dedicate our merit. Yep. So just remember, the merit's empty. So are we, and so is the goal, which is wonderful because then the goal can be accomplished. Right? The goal is dependently arising. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures and as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world.
Stop the share.
Off ahead of you there. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Michael, for being the host. Lovely to see you all again. And let's hope we're still alive next week and we can keep on engaging in Dharma practice.